Hey everyone, it's me, Ryan Turford. I'm in my house, and you're listening to the most PlayStation-rific podcast on the internet. It's the PlayStation Drive. I'm on a Discord call with my friend Matt Sawinski, and on our journey today, oh my god, Bluepoint is officially part of the PlayStation family, and I'm so excited about this, so jump on into the PlayStation Drive. Ba-ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-dow.
Hello, Ryan. Happy Venom Let There Be Carnage Day to you.
I didn't know that was an official holiday, but I guess we're rolling with it. I can tell you're excited to go maybe see it because I think you bought tickets, right? It's happening?
Yeah, Kate over at But Why Though got me very excited with her review, and we rewatched the original one yesterday. And you know what, Ryan? It is a much better movie than people give it credit for, but that's not what we're here to talk about today. How you doing?
I'm doing well. You know, I'm not thinking about Venom, but, you know, this is an interesting start to our day. But, of course, we had a lot of, you know, interesting PlayStation news kind of come out of nowhere today. So it's been a cool day for a PlayStation fan, you know, like us. But before we get into all that stuff, of course, we got to do the rigmarole rule. We got to clean the garage a little bit. So if you like what we do and you want to support the show, there's a number of ways to do that. Number one, you can see our beautiful faces every single week because we put up a video version of the show over on YouTube, youtube.com/YumiCapri every single Friday morning. So you can check us out there. You can also check us out on your podcast feed of choice, Google Play, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're on all the things, so check us out there. Also, if you leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, we will read it on the show. Also, we recently gave away a controller for Apple Podcast reviews over on the Xbox Drive. So you can check out, we actually just drew the winner this week, which is why it was fresh in my mind. So we might have more giveaways like that in the future, so stay tuned for that. Last but not least, if you want to support us and get early access to this show as well as all of our other shows, as well as some exclusive content, patreon.com/YumiCapri is how you do that. They're a little tip in the old tip jar, and out comes content, and you have a good old day, you know, going to the mall, eating at Sbarro, whatever it is that you do on your day. But anyways, I'm going to grab our 8 tracks, pop them in, because we got to get into the show. We got to get this show moving. It's time for the playlist. And we played some things this week, Matt, and I'm going to start with you because you've been a very, very busy person this week with lots of new games coming out. So tell me, what did you play, my friend?
Yeah, well, as everybody knows, if you've checked it out, we have an extra mile up for Kena Bridge of Spirits. I ripped through that over the weekend. Took me about 6 to 7 hours. I have a nice 15-minute long video over for the extra mile to go check that out. But I really enjoyed it. There was a lot to love. It's not perfect. There are some very old school weird glitches along with just some weird programming at certain points, but as a whole, the game captures your heart and doesn't really let go despite its issues. So I mean, if you want my full thoughts, make sure you go check out the extra mile. And I've also been putting a bunch of time into Death Stranding Director's Cut, which to my surprise, Ryan, I'm actually really liking it.
Really?
I wasn't a massive fan of the original when it came out. I probably put about 10 to 15 hours into it, and I liked it fine. It really, really grabbed me at first, but it kind of lost its shine very quickly. I've already played more than that with the director's cut, and I'm not really sure what exactly it is because it is very much still the same game. But I skipped a lot of the introductory cutscenes this time just because I felt like I remembered most of them, and it got me into the action a little bit quicker. And also, I had to start a new save file because I had just sold my PS4 Pro the day before.
Of course,
we got codes for Death Stranding Director's Cut, and for whatever reason, it wasn't uploaded to the PlayStation Plus cloud, so it wasn't even a choice.
Of course, it wasn't.
Right? But I'm actually really happy that it worked out that way because it gave me time to kind of figure the game back out. And yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I don't know if it's a time and place thing. I don't know if it's a mood thing of where I was versus where I'm at today. But, it's clicking a lot more. The story is getting more and more interesting. The DualSense implementation is actually really cool outside of the times that BB is just friggin' crying through the controller at me, and it's just I'm dealing with much bigger problems right now, trying not to get eaten by this black sludge. Stop crying, baby. But otherwise, it's the DualSense feels great. The steps, and you can actually hear and feel the difference upon different surfaces when and the characters running on screen. And yeah, I don't know. I'm going to keep going with it. I'm getting closer and closer to some of the new content. I've seen some of the new stuff already, but I will save my full thoughts and impressions for, the review and the extra mile when that goes up a little bit later, because I'm excited to keep going with it. And I don't know. Has that ever happened to you, Ryan? Have you ever come back to a game after some time and be like, you know what? I like this now, because I can't remember the last time it's hit me as hard as it has with Death Stranding.
Yeah, I mean, it's happened every once in a while. It's not something that happens too often. The biggest example for someone like me is actually Zelda 2 on the NES, which is a game that is a game that not a lot of people really like. Because it's different from all the other Zelda games, and it was a game that I rented as a kid, and I remember hating it and not really liking it that much, but mainly because it's hard to kind of figure out what to do in that game if you're not really used to games like that. But picking it up as an adult and playing it on Wii Virtual Console, which is how I played it there, I couldn't believe just how much I really enjoyed that game. And it's one of my favorite Zelda games now, which is just weird to kind of say, because like younger Ryan would have never believed me if I would have said it. But I actually really love that game a lot. But it's happened to me a few times. That's probably the biggest example I can think of. I know it's not PlayStation related, but close enough to this subject anyways. But yeah, so I'd have to say Zelda 2. But also, I was going to ask you about, what the new content was kind of like, but you kind of alluded to it already when you were talking about it, where you haven't really reached that point yet. So I'm curious to know what you're going to think about kind of the new content that's in the game once you get to that point.
Yeah, I've seen some of it so far, like some of the new, I'm just getting to the buddy bot now, which is going to run around with you. I just unlocked the racetrack as well. So, and I've gotten to the point now where I can do like the side mission, the factory thing that we saw a bunch of times in the trailer. So I'm getting there now, but yeah, I'll have full updates for you soon.
Nice. As for me, I played a few games this week. So number one, I rolled credits on Tales of Arise. I say rolled credits because there's still more to do kind of, after you finish that game. But holy crap, Matt, that game is incredible. We've already been pretty high on it over both this and the Xbox Drive. Like Sean and I have been nerding out about it. I know you and I have nerded out about it as well. And it's such an amazing game. Like they didn't screw up the ending. I really loved kind of the back half of the game and kind of, how it was different from the first half of the game. And man, Tales of Arise was an experience and easily my favorite game of the year that I've played so far. It is really, really, really awesome from everything from the combat to the story and everything else. But I'm not going to dive too much into it, number one, because we talked about it a lot on the Xbox Drive yesterday. But number two, we're going to be doing kind of a big conversation coming up. We're trying to plan that for next week, but we don't really know when that's going to fall into place because, as you can imagine, it's acquisition season or video game holiday season right now, and we have lots of things in the pipeline at the moment. So timing of things,
plenty. Oh my god!
Yeah, so timing for things is going to be interesting. So the main thing is we will have something like that at some point because there's some stuff we need to talk about with that game. Sean and I talked off air for like 20 minutes after we stopped recording yesterday of all the stuff that we've seen in the game. Where we need to have like a bigger discussion about that. So. That's Tales of Arise. I know, Matt, you probably haven't had a ton of time to go back to it, right?
No, I haven't touched it in the last week almost. Ever since Kena and Death Stranding came through, that's pretty much where my focus has been. But I'm very, very, very excited to go back.
We keep throwing games at you, Matt, to review. So, hopefully
that's okay.
At some point, you'll be able to get back to Tales. But beyond that, I played two of the games that got announced this week. One of them I'll talk about here, and then one of them we have a news story about, so I'll talk about my impressions there. But Castlevania Advanced Collection, which we talked about last week, I wasn't expecting this game to be out, right when it was announced, because we knew the announcement was coming during the Nintendo Direct. We had talked about it on last week's show, but literally they shadow dropped it during the Nintendo Direct, so it's already on PlayStation. We also didn't have pricing at the time, but it's $20 for 4 really awesome games. So of course this collection includes the 3 Game Boy Advance Castlevania games, so Circle of the Moon, Harmony of Dissonance, and Aria of Sorrow, as well as the SNES version of Dracula X, which is essentially Rondo of Blood, but it's kind of repurposed for the Super Nintendo, and it's not as good of a version as the version we already have in, I think it's the Castlevania Bloodlines collection, the one that has Symphony of the Night and Rondo of Blood in it. But as a fan of Metroidvania games and a fan of Castlevania games, and as someone who hasn't really played all 3 of these games before, I've played Circle of the Moon before, but I haven't played Harmony of Distance or Aria of Sorrow. It's been an absolute treat kind of revisiting them on PS5 in this collection. I mean, to be fair, it's not really leveraging the power of the PlayStation 5. Again, it is a, Game Boy Advance collection with a Super Nintendo game kind of tied in. But for $20, you can't ask for more value than 3 amazing Metroidvania games and a really great Super Nintendo game for $20. So I think there's great value here. Konami didn't screw it up either. Like, the collection itself has a lot of bonus features. You can play, first of all, you can play all the games in all the different regions. So if you want to play the European version of the games, or if you want to play the Japanese versions of the games, they're all there as well. Although, since they're kind of story heavy, or they're Metroidvanias, so there's a lot of reading involved, probably don't want to play the Japanese version because you won't be able to understand anything, but it's there if you want to see kind of some of the differences. Or if you're a speedrunner, I know like speedrunners generally prefer the Japanese versions of these games to kind of go through. So I'm glad that they're there. Plus there's a bunch of bonus features and stuff that with like concept art and some other stuff. So yeah, really solid collection that, again, just kind of came out of nowhere. We knew it was coming because of the ratings board leaks and the description that we read on last week's show, but I'm so glad it's finally here, and I've been seeing a lot of people who are also newer to Castlevania or newer to these games that haven't checked them out before that are checking them out for the first time. So I'm glad to finally see that this is just accessible easily to everyone across every platform, because the only other place these were re-released before was the Wii U Virtual Console. So beyond that, no one else really had access to these besides, pulling up your GBA at this point. So there you go. Castlevania Advance Collection, go check it out. But again, we talked about, I played something else, but we'll talk about it in just a second. Until then, let's slam the brakes on this conversation, because it is time to get in some of this breaking news, because we got lots of it today. And first off, this morning, an announcement that we kind of saw coming because it kind of got leaked by Sony themselves months ago. But Sony have officially acquired Bluepoint Games, and they're officially joining PlayStation Studios. There's actually a very small blog post that essentially just has like a screenshot of like a statement on it, essentially, which is a bizarre kind of blog post for the PlayStation blog. But they did talk about how they didn't have any new projects for Bluepoint to announce at this time. But they did state that they're going to be working on original content going forward, whether that means they're working on a new IP or a new game that's not a remake is kind of an interesting quirk that goes into this. They also mentioned in the blog post they're not done with acquisitions. So Sony's made quite a few acquisitions over the last couple months, and it sounds like they're not done. So Matt, so I can rest my voice, what do you think about this news?
I just can't believe it, Ryan. I can't believe that Sony has acquired Bluepoint. It's just such a shock.
Yeah.
This is a long time coming. They've been making incredible content for years now. And even though Demon's Souls isn't exactly my cup of tea, I still played it and enjoyed it for what it was. And for the amount of work that they put into it was staggering. Like, it was beautiful. So I'm very, very curious to see what they're doing next, because like you said, the original content, especially like Gene Park over on Twitter was talking about how they're being very cagey as to what exactly that means, whether that is a new IP, whether that is an existing IP, but a new addition in that, or if it is just another remake with added content. There's no word on what exactly it is, and I'm so curious to see what's coming out from them. I know it's going to be awesome, even though it might not be exactly what I want from them. The quality of their products, I think, is not really something that can be argued. So I'm happy for them. This is awesome. This is a long time coming, and I'm also very, very curious to see the day, because there's been a lot of reports about how badly Bluepoint wants to make their own game and their own IP. So I hope they get that chance soon. And I hope this kind of lets them do that. But what about you, Ryan? What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is kind of a no-brainer, like kind of a swish for PlayStation at this point. It's the easiest basket they ever had to make, because this is like, they work so well with PlayStation. They've been partnering with them for years. It feels like kind of when Insomniac was acquired, or Housemarque, where it's just it's such a natural fit for them to bring the studio in, especially because, again, Bluepoint kind of gives them an extra an added element that they don't really have, which is the ability to do a lot of remakes really well, or remasters in a fantastic way. Besides Demon's Souls, I also really love their port of Shadow of the Colossus. I think they did an incredible job with that game as well. And I'm really curious to see what they do next. I mean, Bluepoint has been around for years and have done, remakes going all the way back to the PS3 era and earlier than that. And they've always done an amazing job. So I really hope that they get to do whatever they want at this point, whether it's a new IP or if there's a remake they really want to make. going forward. I'm just curious to see what they do next. I just hope it's not, Demon's Souls 2.
God.
But at the same time, I'm just curious to see what they do next, because I know it'll be awesome regardless of, what it is or whether or not it's for me. So, yeah.
Agreed.
Perfect. All right. Next up, October's PS Plus games have been officially announced. This was on the PlayStation blog, and we're getting Hell Let Loose, which is our PS5 game for the month, and then Mortal Kombat X on PlayStation 4, and PGA Tour 2K21 also on PlayStation 4. Out of these three games, I think probably the best one is surprisingly PGA Tour 2K21. Because it's actually a really good golf game. We were playing it a ton on Xbox last year, and it's actually a really solid golf game. And I think it'll perform pretty well on PlayStation 5. And if you're into golf, I think you're probably going to really like it, especially because I don't think 2K is doing another golf game this year. It won't be until next year that they do kind of their next golf game, because they're doing a Tiger Woods golf game for next year. But I think this is a good game to kind of tide you over until this is out. But all in all, I think it's an okay month for PlayStation Plus. I don't know if it's amazing, but Matt, what did you think about this additions to PlayStation Plus?
I think it's fine. I don't think it's a very particularly strong month. Hell Let Loose does have me curious. I do like a good multiplayer shooter. The timing of this one is interesting for me, given how COD and Battlefield are right around the corner. So I feel like if it does perform well, I wonder for how long, given, those other games are, a month out, basically. I am curious to check it out, though. Mortal Kombat X, I know a lot of people were asking why not the XL edition, which has all the DLC. This kind of seems like a strange edition, given how, we already have it for the PlayStation Plus collection on PS5, and I understand this is more for PS4 players, which is fine. But just kind of weird that they wouldn't give you the, kind of Game of the Year edition at this point, but whatever. PGA Tour, never really played any of them. I am curious to check it out. After playing Mario Golf Super Rush a little bit earlier, I do have a bit of a itch for a proper golf game. So I'm going to check it out, and I'm curious to see. So I think it's an okay month. I don't think it's particularly strong, but I think that if you're into golf games and if you're into multiplayer shooters, then I think you'll find something here. Otherwise, I think a lot of people are going to be kind of it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. And again, Mortal Kombat X, really solid game, but you're right. We already have it on the PlayStation Plus collection at that point. So for us, PlayStation 5 users that are kind of spoiled at this point, we don't really care about that. But again, PGA Tour, I think it's a pretty solid game if people haven't checked it out and they like golf games. So that's at least a plus. But anyways, our next set of announcements, though, no, Matt, just no. So next set of announcements, of course, all come from the Nintendo Direct. So we had the Nintendo Direct last Thursday after we recorded last week's show. But we got a surprising number of PlayStation related announcements from the showcase. So we already talked about the Castlevania collection. We don't need to go over that again, but we talked about that on last week's show. But then this next one really surprised me. Voice of Cards, The Isle Dragon Roars was announced for PlayStation 4. It's a turn-based RPG in the style of Cards, with creative director Yoko Taro at the helm, who is best known for Nier and Drakengard, as well as a bunch of other games in that vein. He also brought on a lot of people that worked on Nier and Drakengard. So there's actually a lot of Nier and Drakengard vets actually on this project. I imagine in Yoko Taro's world, this game will somehow connect to Drakengard and Nier, because those games, for those that don't know, are actually connected together, even though one's way into the future and the other one's in kind of fantasy medieval times. But they're connected together in an interesting way. And I imagine this game, even though we didn't see anything from the trailer to kind of, throw it out there that these games are connected, I imagine they probably will be. So this is actually the other game I hinted at that I played this week, because there's a demo for this game out now. So you can actually go play it, because the game is apparently coming out on October 28th. But they just announced it last week, so kind of a tight turnaround. But this is a game that, from the Nintendo Direct, they kind of showed that it was this weird card game, and I didn't really know anything about it. And I'm someone that isn't really into card-based games at all. But I'm you know what? This is Square Enix. It's Yoko Taro. I'm going to give this game a chance because there's a demo, so I'm going to give it a try. And lo and behold, this game is not a card battling game at all. It's actually just a turn-based role-playing game, kind of like Final Fantasy, but It just happens to be your characters themselves, and kind of your abilities are on cards. Like the cards are kind of the style of the game, but they're not necessarily the mechanics of the game. The mechanics of the game are actually like, very similar to like a Bravely Default or Final Fantasy, where it's like you've got your attack as one of your cards, and then you've got a magic spell or a skill that's tied to your character on a second card, and then your third card is usually an item or some other ability, and they don't rotate out or anything like that. You actually equip them to your character as you acquire them throughout the demo. But the world itself, as you kind of move around it, it's kind of like this, like the world map that you'd see in like a Super Nintendo RPG, where it's like a top-down map, but instead of the top-down map just being a normal map, it's a map with cards. And essentially, as you move through the map with kind of your little chess piece, it kind of reveals more and more of the cards that make up the map, which is just, it's really interesting map design. But yeah, so I actually really enjoyed the demo. I thought it was way better than I thought it was going to be, because again, I was completely mistaken based on what we saw in the Direct as to what kind of game this was, but the demo itself was really solid. So I encourage people, if you like turn-based JRPGs, like Final Fantasy or Persona, like, you should check out this demo. It was actually a lot of fun. Matt, what did you think about this announcement? Because I saw you give some weird looks when I was describing this game.
Yeah, no, just because I actually thought exactly what you had thought prior going into the demo. Seeing the trailer, it looked visually interesting. I don't have any particular affinity towards Yoko Taro. I'm not a massive Neo or Drakengard fan, but his pedigree kind of speaks for itself. So I was curious about checking this out. And I'm going to check out the demo once I'm kind of through the reviews that we're working on, because it does sound interesting. And the more that you talk about it, the more kind of convinced me to check it out. I mean, also it's a demo free, so why not?
Yeah.
Based off the trailer, I thought the cards would be a much heavier mechanic compared to the way that you're describing it. So I'm actually very, very curious to check this out.
Yeah, like honestly, I was not expecting to really like this game, but yeah, it was totally awesome. So yeah, definitely check it out at some point when we have time. It's just coming out at a rough time in the year, because middle of October or end of October, that's when all the big games are starting to come out. So, but luckily, I think the week it's coming out, the only other thing because it was originally the week that Battlefield was coming out and it got delayed. So the only other thing coming out that week is like the House of Ashes, the Dark Pictures anthology game. I think is the only other big game that's coming out the same week.
Guardians of the Galaxy, I think, is the 26th.
No one cares about that game, Matt. It's fine.
What? Come on! No, Ryan!
I'm kidding. I kid. But yeah, so that's out that week too. I forgot. I thought for some reason it was the week earlier, but you're right. Guardians of the Galaxy is technically out that week too. So there's that. I mean, with that game, I'm hoping it's awesome, but we'll see. All right, next up, speaking of the Nintendo Direct, sticking with that, a remaster of the SNES title ActRaiser has been announced and released, because it was actually stealth dropped, called ActRaiser Renaissance. Now, for those that haven't played ActRaiser back in the day, it was a mix of a side-scrolling hack and slash action game mixed with a top-down god simulator. So essentially, as you would complete a level in kind of the side-scrolling sections, you would then go back to this overworld where you basically play as God, and you're basically building this city. And as you build the city will become under attack, and then that will lead to more missions where you're basically on foot doing this side-scrolling hack and slash thing. It's actually a really unique Super Nintendo game. Like, there's nothing else really like that on this console, or really just coming after that, because the closest comparison I might throw out there is Black and White. But imagine the game Black and White, but with a really solid side-scrolling Super Nintendo game. So I was really excited for this announcement, because ActRaiser is a phenomenal game on the Super Nintendo, but they number one, this game is $40 and it's the length of a Super Nintendo game, so you can beat it in a couple hours. Combined with the fact that there's all kinds of bugs and glitches apparently with the game, and they kind of messed with the formula of ActRaiser, so I'm not hearing good things about it, which is too bad, because on the YouTube channel, I actually did a reaction video to the Nintendo Direct that happened, and when they announced this, I was super, super excited for this, because I'm a big fan of the original game. I wanted to see ActRaiser come back. I mean, Square Enix has owned this IP for years and literally done nothing with it, so it was cool to finally announce that they were doing something with ActRaiser for once, and it was no bueno. It was not very good. It was not a good remake, at least from the looks of it. I haven't played it myself, so again, I'm just going by what other people are saying, other reviews of the game and whatnot. But Matt, did you see this trailer? What did you think?
I did. I have no feelings about this personally. I'm not a massive like God Simulator fan, and just from the look of the game, it looked fine. So I'm actually going to turn this around on you for a second, Ryan, because do you think that this could be a possible test bed for a sequel or a new, edition of the game, a new chapter in the franchise, or do you think this is kind of like they're doing it just because they had it, or do you think that they could be actually working on something new?
I feel like this was them testing the waters maybe for something new if this sold well, but it's not priced very well. And I think that's kind of its biggest detriment. And that's why I don't think they're going to probably do anything else with the series beyond this, unfortunately, which is too bad because, again, ActRaiser is like a cool idea for a game. But yeah, to see them go any farther with this, they probably need a lot of support from this game, and I just don't think it's probably going to sell that well. So, which is too bad because this is the type of game that I think could see the light of day and could be pretty popular or just cool, or like a cool arm for Square Enix to kind of have here. But no, it was no bueno. But next up, and this is kind of the last announcement from the Nintendo Direct, Deltarune Chapter 2, which actually recently released on PC about like a week and a half ago, is now available on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 as part of a free update to Deltarune Chapter 1. Toby Fox, the creator of the game, also commented that future chapters for Deltarune will be coming, but will actually cost money. So the first 2 chapters he's giving you for free. He's giving you that little taste of Deltarune, but as far as the game going farther than that, you will have to pay for it. So for those who are familiar with Deltarune, it's actually like a spiritual successor to Undertale because it's created by Toby Fox, who created Undertale. The games are kind of connected, but they're not really connected. But it's same type of gameplay style as Undertale, where it's kind of like a Earthbound-inspired RPG where essentially you can go around, fight monsters, but when you fight the monsters, it's more like a bullet hell shooter where you play as kind of a little heart and you're kind of avoiding stuff, or sometimes you have to do specific things depending on the enemy you're fighting. But you can also like interact with the enemies in a really unique way. Like you can decide to spare them, for example, rather than killing the enemies, and that kind of plays into the story and as well as kind of your choices going further into the game. So I think that Deltarune Chapter 1, I think was really awesome. I played it back when it came out and really enjoyed it. And I haven't played Deltarune Chapter 2 yet. I was kind of waiting for a console release. Now it's here, but unfortunately it's kind of, super busy time right now for games. But I will get to it at some point. It's a game that I want to play before the end of the year. Matt, did you play Undertale or Deltarune? I don't think we've ever talked about Undertale on this show before.
Yeah, I love Undertale. I played it back when it came out. Similar to you, I played Chapter 1 of Deltarune back when it came out a few years ago. And also, I was waiting for some sort of console, confirmation. I haven't downloaded it on my Switch, actually, just because I feel like that's kind of a good game for a little, bite chunk and have it on the go. But I don't know if I'm going to play it yet. I'm at this point now where I don't remember very much at all from Deltarune Chapter 1, just given how long ago it was when it came out. And he, Toby also said that he's trying to put out chapters 3, 4, and 5 together because he doesn't really like this kind of piecemealing out of the game. So I'm at a kind of an impasse right now, Ryan, where like part of me wants to play it just because I really loved Chapter 1, but I know I'm going to have to replay Chapter 1 to get to Chapter 2 just because I don't remember what's going on. So at this point, I'm kind of like, do I just wait for the rest of the game to come out, play it from scratch then, or do I cave and play Chapter 2 now and then inevitably end up playing Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 again when the full game comes out, because I know I'm going to forget when that game comes out like 3, 4, or 5 years from now. So I don't know. I'm really excited about it. I just don't know if I'm going to play it now. I have it downloaded. I have it ready to go, but I can't land on a decision. So it might be one of those things where like if we get to this point where all the reviews are done and there's nothing left really to play, then I might hop in. But I don't know if it's anything that I'm really going to prioritize right now. Yeah. But I am really excited about it.
Yeah, honestly, I think it might be in the same boat as you. I didn't really think about the fact that, it's been like 3 or 4 years since I last played the last one. So, and I honestly don't remember a ton about it besides kind of the ending, which kind of stuck in my mind. But like beyond that, like I might need to replay basically chapters 1 and 2, but then it depends on when chapters 3, 4, and 5 come out. Because to your point, like I think Toby's going to kind of group them all together. But I mean, it took 3 years for this chapter to come out, so who knows how long it's going to be before we see 3, 4, and 5. So maybe you're onto something, Matt. Maybe it's better for us to just wait on this one and kind of go from there. All right, next up, this one kind of came out, it was interesting this morning, but Christopher Judge, who plays Kratos in God of War, was very open about talking about a specific subject in terms of God of War Ragnarok's delay. So he actually was talking on Twitter about how the game itself got delayed due to an injury he actually sustained back in 2019. So according to his tweet, he basically said he was unable to walk. And it's very hard to do performance capture for a game if you're unable to walk. It's because they had been working on the game a long time ago. And not only that, but there's some interesting stuff in the Twitter thread as well about how he was thinking about even quitting the game when he found out that the director was not actually going to be returning for this one, but he had decided to stick with it, which is interesting. So I'm going to go to you in just a second, Matt, but I'm curious about this because the timing of this, because it seems odd to me that if they knew about his injury back in 2019, like he sustained the injury then, and it really took him a while to get better from this, but they announced the game in 2020 and that it was coming in 2021 for sure. And then it got delayed. Like I'm curious to know how that his injury kind of factors into the delay, kind of 2 years after the injury kind of happened and kind of he was over it. But Matt, what do you think about this? I'm curious to know what you think about this subject.
Yeah, I have a couple different feelings about this. I think this is awesome of him to kind of come out and talk about it. I hope there is no repercussions for him, kind of being honest, because it doesn't really seem like this was cleared by anybody. But I think this is awesome on, PlayStation and Sony Santa Monica's behalf, if this is, all completely true. Given him the time and space to recover properly, obviously with how impactful his role as Kratos was in the, God of War reboot, that he did an incredible job, and I really don't see this game without him. So I'm glad they gave him the time and space, and they never rushed him. They kind of let him recover. As to your point, Ryan, I agree. I think that the timing of this is interesting. I kind of wonder if this was just like they started to delay it because of his injury, and then COVID hit, and just a combination of those things together ended up pushing development even further back than they had anticipated. I kind of wonder if that's what it was, but I just think that this is a really cool story. I think this is one of those like very human moments for PlayStation, for Sony Santa Monica, for just being like, yeah, you know what, get better. Especially because that's that thread that he ends it with, talking about how he almost quit because Cory Balrog wasn't coming back, but then Cory was basically like, trust me, and he's like, all right, I'll stay. So I think that's cool. I think there's a lot of really human elements to the story. I just think it's really cool. I think it's a really wonderful story, and especially if this is a significant portion of why the delay happened along with COVID. I think for me, it even just makes it easier to stomach, just be like, you know what, he was hurt, he needed time, and that's totally fine. Give them time to finish the game properly.
Absolutely. And yeah, to all the things you said were definitely on point, Matt. And again, I had only brought up kind of my speculation about it because I feel like he was maybe being too hard on himself, because I don't think necessarily that the delay is all his fault. Like in the way he kind of worded in the tweet, he was like, yeah, the game was delayed specifically because of me and because of my injury, but I feel like there's more to it than that, and that it wasn't just his injury that caused that. So it's more just, me kind of reading this situation where I think he's, being a little too hard on himself. And but again, good on Santa Monica for sticking with him, because to your point, I don't know where they would be without him at this point. If they had to replace Kratos with another actress at this point, which is, again, would be the third time they've had a different actor for Kratos at this point, right? So I'm really glad that they kind of gave him the time to kind of get better, and regardless of how that affected development, I still think it's more COVID more than anything that affected this more than maybe his injury did. So
I think that's a really interesting point and not something I'd considered. So that's awesome, Ryan. Good thinking.
Yeah. All right, last news story this week, and we talked about this a bit on the Xbox Drive yesterday, but I figured we should mention it here. So EA announced Battlefield 2042's open beta dates. So early access begins for the open beta on October 6th for those who pre-ordered the game, or for EA Play members on PlayStation. Everyone else can jump in on October 8th, and the beta lasts until October 9th. So essentially, if you didn't pre-order, or if you're not an EA Play member, you have 1 day to play, which is interesting. But other than that, you can jump in early on the 6th if you are an EA Play member, or if you pre-ordered the game. I know us on Xbox will probably be playing it just because it's included in Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. So, I mean, all of us on the Xbox Drive have access to the game. So we'll definitely be playing it. So we will probably end up talking about impressions of it on the show after the open beta happens. But I'm excited to see just what people think about this game, because I know that there's been kind of hit or miss impressions based on knowing the game's multiplayer only, and some people are really excited about it, but others are not as excited about it because, I mean, we have a lot of shooters out this fall with Halo and Call of Duty and this game. So I'm curious to know what people are going to think when we play the game. And I'm really interested to try this out. Matt, I don't know. I don't think you're a EA Plus Play member. So do you think you'll install this and play it for the one day it's available? What do you think?
So I actually do have Game Pass Ultimate because I use Game Pass on PC and I got that deal of, $1 for a certain set of months. My brother actually does have an Xbox One, so I might steal his for a couple days to give it a whirl. But I'm definitely going to be jumping in. I think the problem is, Ryan, nobody's going to be playing this game during that weekend because Metroid Dread is coming out. So I mean,
true.
Who's going to put their? Nobody's going to be playing it. But oops, sorry about that. In all seriousness, I am really excited for this game. I do really love Battlefield. It's probably my favorite shooter franchise. Mm-hmm. So and I'm not really one that ever plays the single player in Battlefield anyway. I just don't really care for it. So for me, it's not a massive, point that there's no single player. I think a lot of what they're doing with the game is cool. And I'm really excited to actually get a feel for it and jump in, because I feel like this beta for a lot of people will either be the point where they're like, all right, I'm buying it this fall, or this is going to be a wait for sale kind of thing. Because I think regardless of reviews, I think that this is kind of the beta is important for a lot of people here, me included.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to jump in and check it out.
No, same here. I think I'm definitely in the same boat where I'm like, this is a game that I'm currently not picking up right away. But if this beta wins me over, maybe that changes and I maybe pick it up, when it comes out. So I'm just really excited to play it. But to your point, we're all going to be playing Metroid Dread, so I think it's going to be tougher to do it, combined with the fact that there are lots of big releases that week. But luckily, this starts on the 6th, Matt. So I mean, that's
true.
2 days before Metroid Dread. So at that point, we're probably good. So there you go. But that's all of the news this week. But we got a question from the carpool this week. So friends at home, if you would like to be part of the carpool and have your question read on the show, there's a number of ways to do that. Number one, we put up a new question post every Wednesday on Twitter at YumiCapri's on Twitter. So you can leave your question there. Or if you have a question and you're watching us on YouTube, you can leave a question in the comments section and we'll read that on the next show. Or if you join the Yumi Capri Discord, which is free to join, the link is in the show notes. You can join there and leave your question in the PlayStation Drive section. Just make sure to tag us in it, and we will answer it on the show, just like Seamus McIsaac at Famous Seamus did on Twitter. And he asked the question, what was the most surprisingly good PlayStation Plus game that you have played? Like a game that you never heard of or had no intention of playing, but it turned out to be good. So to give you time to kind of think about this question, Matt, the one that came to mind from me almost instantly was Resogun on PlayStation 4 when PlayStation 4 launched, because I was so sure that I was going to be all into Killzone Shadowfall and Assassin's Creed Black Flag, and I didn't really play either of those games all that much, or not nearly as much as Resogun, because Resogun was a game that I figured would probably be good because it's a Housemarque game, and I had known Housemarque from a bunch of games that came out before Resogun came out. But to have that game date with the console and not expecting to buy it, going into it, I wasn't expecting to love it nearly as much as I did, and it really blew me away in a way I wasn't expecting. So Resogun's probably my choice for this one. The problem with PlayStation Plus games is, for me personally, is that a lot of the games I'm really interested in, I usually play day one, or I usually buy on sale. So by the time they come to PlayStation Plus, most of the time I already have them. There aren't too many opportunities for PlayStation Plus to really surprise me. Even with, hidden gems like A Plague Tale Innocence, for example, that came to the service earlier this year. We've had that on Game Pass on Xbox forever. So it's harder for me to kind of find a game that really surprises me or one that I wasn't really expecting launching on Plus. So I defer to you, Matt. What do you think about this question?
Yeah, I think you make a really good point, Ryan, and I'm pretty much in the same camp where, like, if I'm stoked for a game, I'm usually there day one to pick it up. So a lot of the Plus games was kind of like, oh, I was kind of curious about this, I might check it out. I'm gonna leave games like Rocket League and Fall Guys out of the conversation just because, like, I was already stoked on those games before they came out, and then them coming to Plus was kind of just like a happy coincidence. But there are two that really came to mind for this question, and similarly to you, the first one was launch era PS4. Stick It to the Man was a PlayStation Plus game that came out very close to the PlayStation 4's launch. And I had never heard of that game before. I had no idea what it was. I downloaded, booted up, and then fell in love. And for anybody who's not sure, it's like this almost like paper cutout game where you're running around and like diving into the people's brains. And like it's a bunch of fetch quest stuff, but like the humor was really on point. The writing was great. And I ended up really, really loving it, which again, I had no intention of ever playing it. Never even heard of it before I downloaded it, but it really, really grabbed me. And Towerfall. Towerfall was another one that I had not really heard of. And then when it launched the Plus, and we, my friends and I got obsessed with it for quite a while. We played a ton of Towerfall. So those are the two that kind of come to mind. But yeah, similarly to you, Ryan, I don't really remember the last time I really dove into a PlayStation Plus game that I wasn't already looking forward to that happened to launch day one on the platform. But it's nice that it's there.
Yeah, and it's also even day one stuff, like especially with older titles in particular. Those are the ones where it's like I kind of already know what I'm getting with that. So I'm less inclined to jump into it right away, and it's more of a I'll download it and I'll get to it when I get to it kind of thing.
Exactly.
Also, to go to your two real quick. Number one, Stick to the Man. That's a deep cut. I forgot that game even existed until you just brought it up right now.
Right.
And then Towerfall. I can't believe you didn't play it on Ouya, Matt. That's the real platform for Towerfall.
That's my mistake.
I know. You just didn't have your Ouya just
Fake
ready
fan.
and waiting to play. I know. Fake fan of Towerfall.
Fake Ouya fan.
Anyways, I hope that satisfied your curiosity, Seamus. But we got to go. But before we go, Matt, plugs go.
Yeah, you can find me over on Twitter at burnout_Matt, and you can find our content over at youtube.com/burnoutbrighter, where we have a bunch of reviews. We're going to have a new one going up today for World's End Club, which is, again, a bit of a deep cut. That game's been around for a while, but, we finally got to play it. So, yeah, find us there.
Very nice, my friend. As for me, you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Turford. You also find us on Twitter at YouMeCapris, as well as on YouTube, youtube.com/YouMeCapri, and on podcast services around the globe. So for Matt Sawinski, I'm Ryan Turford. This has been episode 20 of the PlayStation Drive, and we out. The PlayStation Drive is fueled by patrons over at patreon.com/YouMeCapri, and I want to say thank you to each and every one of our patrons from the bottom of my heart from your support across all of our content. And let's start by thanking our CaPremium producers, Dallas Ford, Lee Navarro, the fearless leader of the Phoenix Overdrive Extra Life team, and Johnathan Brown over at youtube.com/PM Entertainment. Our platinum producers, Robby Miller and TruckerSloth, and our gold members, ARGO, Brendan Myers, Dallas Robbins, Emily O'Kelly, Heather Boney, James Johnson, Joel Brooks, Jose Jimenez, Mac Time, Benjicong, Marcus O'Neill, RJ Kern, Dannohh, Skinny Matt, Mr. and Mrs. Nasty Boots, Fuji, and Xavier Reyes. Thank you all for all of your support.